Welcome back. It's the Big Blue Banter New York Giants football podcast. I'm Dan Schneider, joined as always my co-host Nick Filato. Giants rookie minicamp is here. It has arrived despite the weather not exactly cooperating, but they're doing some stuff indoors over there. I saw a video clip of Abdul Carter moving forward to a green ball. That was riveting content that I was
great
really
content
waiting for. I had a reminder set on my phone and on my laptop. Beep, beep, please alert me when I get to watch Abdul Carter chase a green ball. But, with minicamp in here, we want to talk about a few things because we have some other things that have kind of gone down. Some information we can start with in a moment on Gabe Davis and the Giants' potential pursuit of him. Player the Giants cut, who was mentioned in the Gabe Davis show, and then some clips that have surfaced. Look, we don't have Hard Knocks this year, Nick, but we are getting Giants Life, which is the Giants controlled version of what goes down in the draft. And I'm sure that they are happy to have more full control over what they're going to be releasing. But some very interesting clips have been released. There was a clip of Jackson Dart and his top 30 visit that I want to go over with you. There was a clip of Joe Schoen, two clips of Joe Schoen on draft night. One, the trade up process for Jackson Dart and what went down there. And two, a final attempt and confirmation to trade up to number 1 overall for Cam Ward. So just a lot to talk about on that front, Nick. But let's start here because, you and I are probably not going to get into too deep into the weeds of what's going on in rookie minicamp as they chase a ball. But let's talk a little bit about Gabe Davis, because it's a player that we talked about us wanting the Giants to pursue, just to kind of TLDR that. It's because he can be a big blocking presence. He can help them in the run game and allow them to run a more diverse run scheme. In my mind, he can be a threat on those Mills concepts down the field, those back shoulders, those 50-50 balls. And also, he's a veteran player that gives them depth. But what I learned today, Nick, and what we learned today was he was waived with an injury designation and a failed physical. So I think that there could be some injury concern with Gabe Davis as the end. It wouldn't surprise me if he's not signed right away by the Giants or by anybody.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me either. And look, dude, little Jordan Humphrey was just terminated as well.
Yep.
And we spoke a lot about that because it's so obvious, Dan, that the New York Giants are looking for this big-bodied wide receiver, whether that's because he's a receiver or a blocker. They still have Zach Pascal on the roster. But if you look at these UDFAs the New York Giants brought in, these aren't small guys, man. These are some big dudes like Bo Collins that give him Notre Dame. He's a big wide receiver. Daquan Felton, the kid from Virginia Tech, that's like a 6'5" wide receiver. Now, not the thickest, but still, the Giants really have this desire to add big height, physicality to their wide receiver room. And I'm sure it's for a variety of different reasons. And Gabe Davis still does fit that. We just got to wait and see exactly what's going on with him. Maybe he gets added like Greg Van Roten did to the Giants training camp just before training camp. But again, a lot of this is contingent on health.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, Humphrey's cut, Gabe Davis not in the mix yet, could open up a spot for a potential riser during training camp and the rest of OTAs, Nick, somebody who is familiar with Jackson Dart very well, Antoine Juice Wells, who the Giants signed from Ole Miss. I mean, you watched Jackson Dart tape. I watched Jackson Dart tape. We're both still watching more and more, rewatching. We see him a lot. He pops up a lot. I wouldn't say he's the biggest receiver. I think he's just under 6'1", 200, but he plays pretty big for his size, I think. Interesting player. They didn't cut him. He's a UDFA, but they are bringing him in, and I think he's going to have a real shot to maybe make this roster, given the familiarity he has with Jackson Dart, or at minimum make the practice squad, which will be very interesting to see as they move forward this wide receiver plan.
And what does that say about Bryce Ford-Wheaton, too? Now, Bryce Ford-Wheaton has been around for a while, adds special teams value, had the fastest 40 at his combine back in, what was that, like 2023? And then he tore his ACL last year, had some flash plays in preseason, and then helped out a little bit on special teams, but didn't do all that much. But the Giants brought in 6 UDFAs. I think like 5 of them, other than Wells, again, he has like solid size, but he's not like a big guy. But the other 4, they're big dudes. And then Jordan Bly is a smaller type of guy from a smaller school as well. So the Giants definitely are attempting to find that type of player who can go in there and be a difference maker as a UDFA. I mean, not everybody can be Victor Cruz, of course, but an Antoine Wells, he at least has some sort of rapport with the possible quarterback of the future in Jackson Dart. So we'll see. There might be an opportunity for one of the true opportunity for one of these guys to earn a roster spot this training camp.
For sure. And look, you said it best. It's clear what they're trying to do. They look at their roster, Jalen Hyatt, Wandell Robinson, Malik Neighbors. They need to add some size. They need to add some physicality. They did it last year at tight end with Manhurts. They're continuing to do it. So let's see what happens moving forward and who ends up making the roster and if that plays a role. But I want to talk a little bit with you about these jersey numbers. And if you have any thoughts on that, it's a big topic from, Giants Twitter and fans are interested. So we have some numbers now. Nick, we have Lorenzo Carter, first pick, 51, wearing that Azeez Ojulari stained 51. No, just kidding. Azeez was good when healthy. We have Jackson Dart wearing 6. Some were thinking 212. Those weren't available. 6 as a quarterback number. And we have my favorite so far, and we'll talk about all of these. My favorite is Cam Scadaboo wearing 44. Mod Bradshaw's old number. Darius Alexander, 91. And I don't know any of the other numbers, so you may, but I do not know. I don't remember them or I didn't see them. So any thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I'm not a huge let's get into the conversation about the numbers guy. I love, though, the Cam Scadaboo 44, and I really do like the Darius Alexander 91. 91 is not a retired number, although a lot of Giant fans, we look at 91 with a lot of reverence due to Justin Tuck. But I appreciate that a player that we're high on is going to be able to attempt to live in the shadow of Justin Tuck, but he's going to pave his own way in 91. And hopefully we'd be talking about number 91 for quite a while. 51 for Carter is fine too, right? Like, yeah. Like who on the New York Giants have wore 51 other than Azeez Ojulari? I'm trying to remember if there was like a big 51 prior to that we talked about for a very long time. And there's not one that's coming to my mind right now. So I just pulled up a list. You have Azeez Ojulari. Zach Diassi was the player who was wearing it for so long. That's why it doesn't come up. It was Zach Diassi being sneaky there. And then of course, Kyler Fackrell back in 2020. We remember that as well. So it hasn't been a number that has popped. Like there is a lot that Carter can do with number 51. And then Jackson Dart at 6. I'm okay with it. Baker Mayfield wears 6, right? It's not really a popular number, I don't believe, for the quarterback position. So maybe Jackson Dart can change that.
Yeah, I like 6 for any quarterback. It's a fine number. I don't have too many thoughts on these jersey numbers. I don't love 51 for Carter. I like even though I'm just trying to think like what I would have liked. I wouldn't have minded double nickels 55. Just think that looks good on a jersey. For a linebacker, I wouldn't have personally minded like a 90s number. I know he's a linebacker, but I think he's an edge. Like, just think it'd be cool to watch a 90 fly off the edge. So I like 91 for Alexander. By far, my favorite is Scadaboo because is a little bit of Bradshaw to his game. Not a lot. They're different players, but there's a little bit of Mod Bradshaw to his game. And I love to see that 44 back in the bit, especially the white jersey 44. That's the one I remember most for Bradshaw. Maybe some of the better games, his breakout game against the Bills during his rookie season, the Super Bowl. So yeah, man, I'm just excited to get this going and see these rookies. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's weird, but with running back and 40 numbers, they're all gross except for 44, and then just randomly 41 works for certain running backs. Like Alvin Kamara,
right?
Like 41 just works for him. But when you see a running back with like 43, you're like, I think Darren Sproles was 43, and for whatever reason that worked. But any number on him, since he was so short, it would just work out for him, and he was like such a niche back. But generally speaking, I don't love 40 numbers for running backs, but 44 for Scadaboo, I'm pretty pumped about.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Usually it seems like they're slow in the 40s, but
hello, ladies and gentlemen. Look, we all love to work out. The summer's coming around. You want to look good in your bathing suit, but in order to enhance your workout, you want to go and use MitoPure from Timeline. This is a great product. When I started using it, it makes me feel stronger, gives me more energy. I recover quicker. I'm in my 30s. I still have the energy to work out. And if you want that energy, you really should give Timeline's MitoPure a shot and work it into your routine. The great year of 2025 is your year to be the best, most energized, most revitalized you. MitoPure promotes cellular renewal and mitochondrial health to address common signs of aging at the root. MitoPure is the research-backed innovation that unlocks your fullest potential. Timeline is offering 10% off your order of MitoPure right now. So go to timeline.com/banter. It's timeline.com/banter. That's Timeline.
It'll be fine there. Let's get off jersey talk. This is really not our forte here, Nick. Never has been, never will be. I want to talk about some of the clips the Giants have released. The first one, look, we heard all the reports about the Giants potentially trying to trade up for number one. The reports that suggest the Giants were the most aggressive team in trying to trade up. The reports suggest the Giants were, very aggressive and onto something at the combine, and they were getting close to a deal with the Titans. But the Titans either A, watch more Cam Ward, love more Cam Ward, or B, asked for too much. Multiple first round picks in the future plus this pick. And ultimately, a deal never got done. I would lean toward the former. They just wanted Cam Ward. And they just took Cam Ward.
Yeah.
But then on draft night, Joe Schoen gave a call one more time to the Titans GM, Mike Berganzani. What is it? How do you say that guy's name again?
I think it's Mike
Berganzi. They gave me Mikey. Hey, Mikey. This is Joe Schoen. Hey, Mikey. Let me talk to you real quick. Come over here. Come over here, Mikey. We gonna do this trade? No. All right, I had to try. That's basically what he said. I had to try one more.
This was you trying to do like a Godfather thing.
I don't know.
Terribly too. I appreciate it though. I love when you do that. I love when we try to do voices that we're not good at and we never practice it. We're being very vulnerable, right?
Yeah, you feel that you're 100% right. You always feel vulnerable because you're just like, I don't know what I'm doing here, and I'm just flying off the hinge. But yeah, look, he said, Mikey, I'm going to give you one more shot at this, or I want to take one more shot at this, and they laughed together, and the deal wasn't done. So it's just interesting to me, Nick, that even on draft night in Joe Schoen's mind, like, if something had changed with the Titans, he would have done that trade to trade up to one. And then ultimately, so they were willing to trade all these assets to get Cam Ward. Then ultimately, they do make another trade for another quarterback, but they don't take that quarterback at 3 in Jackson Dart. So it's an interesting dynamic to me. We'll get to what happened with the Jackson Dart trade, but I don't know. I just find it a little, I don't want to say weird or wrong or bad that this is how it went down. It's just odd to me almost that they had Cam Ward in that tier of willing to trade up for him and give up assets. Probably, and they would have given up next year's one, to be honest with you, Nick.
Definitely.
The Titans wanted more than that. But then they didn't feel like Jackson Dart was on the level of just taking at 3 overall. Do you make anything of that?
I mean, I don't make anything of it other than it's reality. And that's Joe Schoen had a higher grade on Cam Ward than Jackson Dart. And there's nothing wrong with that. And that's fine, right?
Seems like a much higher grade.
Yeah. I think so. And judging by some of the other videos that have been released, and this is not to say that Joe Schoen hated Jackson Dart or didn't want him at all, but this was much more of a Brian Daboll pick. This was much more of a selection for the head coach.
Yeah.
Whereas I think Joe Schoen, if he had his druthers, more than likely would have went in another direction. But
Yes.
Brian Daboll had conviction. And I believe that word was used in the video, if I'm not mistaken, right? Didn't Joe Schoen say, you have conviction about this player? We're going to get you guy.
Yeah, we can get to that.
Yeah, exactly. And to me, that's what this whole selection of Jackson Dart is all about. I mean, you saw Brian Daboll so excited, man, in the video, and I encourage anybody to go and watch it. He referred to Joe Schoen by his government name. He called him Joseph. I've never heard anybody call Joe Schoen Joseph. And he just laid, good job, Joseph. He was so happy that Joe Schoen went up and got his guy. That does display a cohesive front office coaching staff. And that's something that, we never really questioned early on with Shane and Daboll because they were best bros. They were going to Rangers games. They were celebrating. They were doing all this stuff, right? But then over this last year with all the tension, we questioned it a little bit. But like this type of move does show a lot of trust from Joe Schoen to hitch his general manager wagon to a quarterback on behalf of his head coach.
I guess that's a great way to look at it, Nick, because I almost looked at it not the opposite way, but just like I considered it doesn't look that unified to me. Because for those who don't know, like they also released a video of the Giants where Joe Schoen is, he's talking throughout. We can get to that in a moment, like all his trade to try to trade for Dart. But when he says, look, in the end, they're not going to remember that 3rd round pick we gave up if this guy hits. And it's like, and then he said, you guys have a conviction. This is what he said to Daboll, Joe Schoen. You guys have a conviction on him. You guys really liked him. You guys, you. A lot of you, not we. Which I think if it was Cam Ward, it would have been, we love him. We have a conviction on him. And I don't know what direction Joe Schoen would have gone. Some speculate he would have taken Shedeur Sanders or traded up for Sanders. I don't really believe that. I think he might have just passed on quarterback in this draft, to be completely honest, and gone to the next class. I'm not sure Joe Schoen had a conviction on any quarterback in this class except for Cam Ward. That one we now know is obvious. The Sanders is speculation. I kind of feel like Brandon Brown liked him more, and I don't even know if Brandon Brown liked him as much on the field as he liked what he brought as a leader and stuff like that, and believed in who he was for the program. It's hard for me to imagine too many people liked. I just want to sit here, Nick, to be completely honest with you, and believe that the Giants weren't the team that said, I want to trade back into one for Shedeur Sanders. And I want to believe that they weren't the team that said, I want to take Shedeur Sanders at 3 overall, Nick. And by they, I mean like Joe Schoen and the front office. Obviously, it's clear Daboll had no interest in that. And I'm saying I want to believe that because teams passed on him until round 5. And then that would make the Giants the only team that believes this guy is worth the 3rd pick or even worth trading back into round 1 for. And that would be really troubling to me if Brandon Brown and Joe Schoen found this guy to be a 6'1" quarterback with limited mobility and limited arm talent to be worth the 3rd pick or even worth trading back into round 1 for. So I'm just going to go along that lines, Nick, and hope that that wouldn't be the case. But it is kind of clear to me that like Joe Schoen did do what you said. He kind of just deferred to Daboll and was like, you guys are convicted on Dart. You love him. He checked all the boxes for you guys. I'll do this. I'll go ahead and I'll trade up and I'll make that move for you.
I'm pretty sure it's not that Joe Schoen wasn't convicted at all. Like, again, Joe Schoen is trading assets out of his pocket to go get Jackson Dart.
Right.
That's what I think you're very convicted. Like first off, let's go back to last year, Dan. Remember last season, there was this seeming, and again, we're reading through the tea leaves a little bit, but it did seem like there was some animosity from the coaching staff on the front office because the quarterback situation was pure ass, and it was Daniel Jones and it was Drew Lock, and that's what Brian Daboll had to deal with in perhaps his last season as a coach. Now Joe Schoen says, you guys are convicted. We're getting you your guy. We like this. Let's go. I think it's not necessarily that Joe Schoen doesn't love Jackson Dart. Again, he doesn't love him like he loved Cam Ward. I think that's very clear. But it's more so like I am willing to trade up to secure this because if you are right, and I believe in you as a coach, then no one's going to remember that 3rd round pick anyways. It's not that big of a deal if we can get this guy to hit. But to me, it's not like, oh, Jackson Dart, I think Jackson Dart sucks. You think he's good, so we're going to go there. I think you like Jackson Dart, but he probably wouldn't have made that move if it wasn't for Daboll nudging him in that direction.
Yeah, I think you just nailed that completely. I don't think he does make that move. It's not for Daboll nudging him. And I think that there was what you just said, some personally, I mean, look, this is us speculating, Nick, and I know you probably agree with this, though, despite the speculation. I don't think Brian Daboll was thrilled with the quarterback room he was handed last year and his ability to win. I mean, he made that pretty clear in his late season presser when the Giants beat the Colts, and he's like, see, look at what happens when I get decent quarterback play. And that quarterback play was never going to be decent with Drew Lock, Daniel Jones, and Tommy DeVito as your quarterback room. Anyone with 2 cents and a mind and watches any kind of tape, even a minute of this thing, and can just understand the game, can understand that quarterback room has no chance to succeed. There's no one in that quarterback room that is capable of playing quarterback at a decently high level for any kind of consistent stretch. And it's been proven time after time with Jones, Lock, and DeVito. So with that said, Daboll's sitting there like, Joe, what the hell happened here? We brought in Russ. You weren't willing to guarantee him the job. You didn't give me any of those quarterbacks last year's class. And who knows, by the way, Nick, it's possible, and I don't know this, but it's possible in last year's class, Daboll might have had a conviction like he has on Dart for one of those quarterbacks that were drafted after May, Daniels, and Caleb that was available to the Giants with the Neighbors pick, and he might have wanted that quarterback. I don't think that's the case because Daboll made it pretty clear in the videos that were released that he loved Malik Neighbors and Malik Neighbors was his guy. But it's possible that one of those quarterbacks, Nick, he wanted to trade back into round 1 for like he did for Dart. We'll never know that. And Joe Schoen might at that time been like, we're not doing that, right? This is not the route we're going. We were considering.
Not to cut you off, but remember, Joe Schoen was very heavy on like the Daniel Jones Kool-Aid, like trying to sell the contract that they gave. Like, no, we believe in Daniel.
Of course.
And then Daboll's like, yeah, we believe in Daniel. And then
what's good for Joe's career? What's good for Joe's career is you bring in Malik Neighbors, Jones breaks out that we all know was never coming, but the breakout was coming because all you needed was a receiver and a decent O-line. And then Joe Schoen is the genius because he gave the contract, and then we're heading into the next year. This year, like, oh my God, Jones is only $40 million against the cap. Look at all these other quarterbacks. Jones is only like the 13th or 12th or 11th highest paid quarterback. What a steal, Joe Schoen. You killed it. You're the best. And like, oh my God, Joe Schoen, GM of the year. You know, he thought that was a possibility, or even if he thought it was a slim possibility, Joe, at that point, you know, he wanted to at least let that play out and give it a chance rather than just move on from Jones by signing Russell Wilson or trading back up for a quarterback and saying I made a mistake with the Jones contract, which he finally had to accept this year. Or actually, not this year. He accepted it after the Carolina game when he cut him. So it is interesting to think about if Daboll had that. Maybe that played a role in this one too, right? Like maybe Daboll was like, dude, you didn't give me a chance at any of these guys last year, trading back up for any of them. I need a chance. And like, it's clear that even though Joe says, Nick, at least it's clear to me, even though Joe says you had a conviction on him, you guys loved him, so we'll make this trade up for Dart. It's clear it's not the conviction he had on Jaden Daniels, right? Again, he would have just taken Dart at 3 overall if he had that level of conviction. I think the conviction they're discussing here is the conviction of we know this is a little bit of a, I don't want to call it a risk, but we know this is a little bit of a project play versus some of those other guys.
I think you're right. And I also, let's look at the quarterback options from Joe Schoen's perspective. You're going down the draft order and you have the intention of possibly trading up to get a quarterback at the back end of the first round. It's something that they certainly planned for. And if you watch those videos, Joe Schoen is talking about basically every team in that area and how they've had discussions prior to the draft based on certain scenarios that may or may not unfold. So when it comes to trading up, I think Joe Schoen is just like, hey, no one is taking quarterback. I don't envision a lot of these teams taking quarterback. Maybe the Pittsburgh Steelers, we have to see. But we like Jackson Dart. We like Tyler Shuck. And we like Shedeur Sanders, possibly. But Daboll, I don't think likes Shedeur because Shedeur absolutely, supposedly tanked the interview process. Again, I'm not
also,
in the room.
He doesn't at all fit Daboll's system whatsoever.
No, but again, like the tanking of the interview process, if that's true, that, I mean, you know, you say you get offended because Daboll threw a curveball at you, you didn't pick up the or you didn't catch the curveball, and then you gave some lip back to Daboll about it. Like, that's not going to fly with an NFL coach. They're not going to have the patience for that type of attitude. So, but from Shane's perspective, he's looking at it like that. He's like, well, you know, I could trade up. We can get Jackson now and get ahead of this. But he might have viewed Shedeur and Tyler Shuck in the same exact light as a Jackson Dart. It's just Daboll was probably advocating and pushing very hard for Jackson Dart over those other two. And this is pure speculation on my part, but it may add a little bit of context to why Joe Schoen was picking and choosing certain words in these videos.
And I'll be honest with you, Nick, I kind of like the idea of Brian Daboll getting the upper hand or getting the final say on
He's
this.
The one coaching him, man.
The quarterback position. Exactly. One, he's the one coaching him. Two, I still believe in Brian Daboll's mind. Like, and I watch these clips of him putting these quarterbacks up on a whiteboard, or I listened to Aaron Rodgers be like, I had a great conversation with Daboll this offseason. I think he's a beautiful football mind. I do believe Daboll sees the game really well, understands how to move the ball through the air. I think it's been tough for him with these quarterbacks. He's had Daniel Jones, he's had Drew Lock, he's had Tommy DeVito, and he's had Tyrod Taylor. The only time he had anyone who I think is any reasonable NFL talent was Tyrod Taylor. And when he had Tyrod Taylor had the eighth best clean pocket grade in the whole NFL. So, you know, taking out all pressures, he was pretty consistent. And then he had the number 1 explosive pass rate in the NFL. So he did what Daboll wanted him to do. He was able to create explosive pass plays.
And what did Russell Wilson lead the league in this year?
That explosive pass rate. So it's clear that that's what Daboll wants, and it's the vision he has. And I think that vision's a good vision if he can get the right guy in. So I will trust that he likes this guy a lot, Jackson Dart. Not 3 overall, but he likes him enough.
Yeah. And look, dude, again, a lot of this comes down to the value. Last year, there were 5 or 6 quarterbacks taken in the top 12 of the NFL draft. So all those teams aren't taking quarterbacks. And then everybody, like a lot of there were 3 teams, 4 teams maybe that were vying for quarterbacks, and they have a lot of other needs as well. The consensus is this is a down quarterback draft class. You don't need to take a quarterback number 3 overall if there are other options, and if you can maneuver and trade and see it. And if you have Jackson Dart in that same bucket as the Tyler Shuck or the Shedeur Sanders, for instance, right? But when the opportunity arose, they came together, and Joe Schoen made the trade to get the quarterback for the guy, his head coach, and Brian Daboll. And I'll say this too, man. Other than Cam Ward, is there and I know Jackson Dart comes from a heavy, high-tempo RPO spread system. We've talked ad nauseum about that. But the lack of reluctance and the penchant to go and throw down the field, the verticality, that Jackson Dart really wants to play with? Is there another quarterback in this draft class that you would rather pair with Brian Daboll? Like, I think Dart's traits mesh well with what Daboll theoretically wants to do every Sunday on the football field.
Completely agree with you. The only person I would say could even be in the mix for that would be Tyler Shuck, and that's
And
about it.
yes, and the one thing about Shuck, though, and I agree, Shuck from an arm talent perspective, absolutely. But we know Daboll likes to have the option to run the quarterback. And Shuck,
Right.
I mean, he could do that, but like
Not
that's
really.
not
No.
his game, bro. Like
No.
like Jackson Dart and Cam Ward, they can do that for sure. They can operate. Hey, if you want to run quarterback power, if you want to run zone read, if
Right.
you want to design rushing plays for your quarterback, Jackson Dart's built like a running back. He's like 6'2",
Yes.
220. He can do that. I want him to be smarter when he does it, but he can do that. And I think that's very valuable. And he's also going to throw the ball down the field and try to create some explosive plays. That's one of the reasons why I look at the Jackson Dart edition and I'm like, he's probably, you know what, thinking about him more, this guy is the perfect fit for what Daboll wants out of this, to be frank, this relatively weak quarterback class.
Yeah, for sure. And while I do think that Shuck may have more arm talent than Jackson Dart, I think Jackson Dart, and he does. I think Jackson Dart makes some of the throws better than Shuck, and those throws are throws that fit Daboll's system. You can just watch and see all the Sale concepts and the Mills concept that they were running at Ole Miss, and the way that he likes to throw that outside the number Sale, and the way he likes to throw the Mills. Shuck can make those throws. I think naturally he has more arm talent. I think if you're talking about who's sitting in the pocket and who's can throw, with more velocity and get the ball to quicker to better spots down the field off their back foot and without it being able to hitch into a throw, that's probably Tyler Shuck. But I think you're also looking at a quarterback in Shuck who may just shy away from it, fall back, and then the accuracy goes way off. Dart will stand in there and take a hit. And that's something I'm sure Daboll likes. And I like that you brought up the run game too, because Jackson Dart can and will be used in the design run game. Plus, Jackson Dart's 21 years old and Shuck is 25. That's got to be a factor in your kind of development. It's got to be something. It's got to be worth something at some point.
Dude, Dart was the youngest quarterback in this draft class.
Yes.
And he also comports himself in a manner that I think meshes with the New York Giants and Brian Daboll. Like even like something stupid, like you're watching him go into the Giants facility for the first time and he opens the door and he allows his sister and his brother who looks just like him and his mom.
Just like him.
Yeah, just like him. And he has I think his name's like Diesel too. It's like, okay. But he opens a door for his family, lets them all, like little things like that. Like John Mayer's going to be like, oh, I really like that. That's really good. It shows a lot of maturity. So like, I think that is another aspect of reasons why why this front office and this team in general may appreciate him. But overall, it's because I think Daboll sees the dog in him.
Yeah, and I think overall it's because of what you said earlier. And I want to go back to that a little bit. It's because I think Daboll thinks this guy fits his system, what he wants his system to be, better than anybody in this class except for Cam Ward. And that's why he was Brian Daboll's quarterback. Go ahead. You have something?
No, I was just gonna say. I mean that is certain for sure. I think it's like a collective. It's all of that, right? Like Dan, like it's how he acts. It's his fire on the field. It's his traits. It's what happened on the whiteboard with Brian Daboll. And again, that's coming from a much different offense. I believe the Giants see Jackson Dart transitioning to the NFL under the tutelage of Brian Daboll, obviously, or else they wouldn't have made this move. So it's everything collective. I think they saw that. They had an area of the draft they wanted to trade back into. You already get Abdul Carter. That's your number one pick. And now you're getting your quarterback of the future, the back end of the first round. If this does work out and if this does hit, if Jackson Dart can be a 10 to 12 best quarterback in the league for his career, like that's a win at this point. If you're competing,
win.
Yeah, just 10 to 12. Like, look, he's not Joe Burrow. He's not Josh Allen. You're not saying that, but I'm trying to think of a quarterback that has his skill set but that's probably a little bit difficult. But if he's like slightly better than Kirk Cousins or something, but with the rushing upside, that's a win in my honest opinion.
Sure. I think that's fair. I think Kirk Cousins is a little bit more arm talent personally, but I
agree with that.
I think he's underrated in general from an arm talent standpoint. But Dart is a more mobile player, and Dart can be a good player in the NFL if Daboll is what Daboll's supposed to be. And I think that when it comes to what Joe is saying there, I have this conviction, or you had this conviction on this guy. You love this guy. You checked all the boxes. I think that conviction to me, Nick, was that this was the second best quarterback in the class, and this for Daboll, I mean, and this was the clear cut quarterback too. No one was even remotely close, and I think that's what sparked this idea that was clearly developing and brewing for weeks and maybe even months before the draft of we're going to try to trade back into round one to get this quarterback because, like you said earlier, like maybe this was a weaker quarterback class. Yeah, it wasn't like last year where quarterbacks were flying off the board. But at the same time, if you know that you only love one guy as your QB after Cam Ward, and Cam Ward's definitely off the board at 1, and you know you can't get him, you probably don't want to take a risk because in your mind, Shuck isn't close enough, and Sanders isn't close enough to what you're looking for at quarterback 2 and what you're looking for at the quarterback position in general. That doesn't necessarily mean to me, Nick, that they believe that he has Cam Ward's ceiling or really anywhere close to the NFL, but it does tell me that they believe he has the ability to be a quarterback that they can win with.
I'm right there with you, and that's the hope at this point with Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen. I just I find it interesting that we're getting these videos, and I also like it too. I also find it a little bit humorous, right? That that the Giants are combing through that and putting the right content out in front of us. They're not going to have egg all
I don't
over their
know why
face.
they would even add the clip of Joe Schoen calling up the Titans GM again to try to get that trade on draft night.
I think that was I took that as a joke.
I guess, but it's confirmation that they had talked already about that trade. They could have just let it be, and it would have just been, oh, it's another pre-draft rumor. We don't know if this is true. We don't know if it is true or not. We never know.
There was a lot of reliable reporting on that, though, wasn't there?
But that same thing, that's happened before. Like, and still from Jackson Dart's and Cam's perspective, it's still they can pass it off as it's just, or even the Giants could have been like, you know how they are pre-draft with these reports. There's no truth to that. But now there is confirmation to that. So I thought that was weird to release, but it is what it is. Dart's not the type of I've always been with these quarterbacks, Nick. Don't baby these guys. They don't need to have no competition. They don't need to have we can't try to kick anyone. Like when everyone last year was like, I can't believe the Giants did that to Daniel Jones, releasing all that Hard Knocks footage of them trying to trade up for a quarterback. It's like, dude, the guy sucked for 5. Of course they got to do. What do you want them not to go for a quarterback? If he's anything, if he's the guy he's supposed to be, Daniel Jones, and whoever it is, sorry to bring him up, then he's supposed to be good when that happens. He's supposed to be motivated by that. He's supposed to be even better as a competitor, not, shell down into a turtle shell. And then reports came out that he was really hurt by the Giants. Like, hurt by the Giants, dude? What do you expect? This is a 17-year scholarship that you're on. It's like unbelievable to me at some point, like where the mindset was for some people and for some this situation. But for Dart, I don't think it's going to be like that. I don't think he's going to be hurt by the fact that they tried to trade up for Cam Ward because they do believe in him. They traded assets to get him. They traded 2 third-round picks.
Yeah,
what I mean? They believe in Dart. Now, let me ask you a question about this because Joe Schoen, this was another clip that released. I'm curious your thoughts on this. So, in the clip, Joe Schoen was like, look, reports and rumors came out that we're looking to trade to back up to get into round 1. And he basically said, like, it seems like every team knows that this is the case. And he's like, every team picking from 18 on has been calling me about a trade. So essentially, like, as that draft rolled on to 18 in round 1, teams are just calling the Giants up and being like, what can I get out of you for this pick? And rolled through. And finally he got a deal with the Texans at 25. Do you think that's a good thing? That it was known? Did it give us more options and trade suitors? Or would it have been better to be like super coy about it and then you do the work like on draft night and be like, hey, 25 or hey, 24, like we're looking to get back in?
I mean, to
you
me,
lose leverage?
Maybe, but it's more of just a reflection of reality. People knew the Giants wanted a quarterback long term. They know that Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll's seat are hot. They know that they don't have a quarterback beyond Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson that's not named Tommy DeVito, and they're aware of the situation with their jobs being tenuous at this point. So to me, it's just a reality. Like I don't think it's the Giants blabbing. I think they made a lot of calls, and it was well known that they wanted to trade back up into the first round because they wanted to, and they were calling a lot of people, and they were letting them know, hey, what's it going to cost? What I do appreciate about it is Joe Schoen wasn't like, oh, Chargers. Oh, okay. Yeah. Just like he was still like, no, this is what I'm willing to give up.
Yes.
If you want more, we're not going to do it. And then a lot of teams tried strong-arming him, and he stuck to his laurels, and he gave up the assets that he believed were worth the Giants trading up. So to me, that shows a judgment and a judicious nature for Joe Schoen. So that's one aspect of that I certainly appreciated.
Yeah. And look, ultimately, when we look at the total deal, especially when we compare it to what the Falcons gave up to trade back into round one for an edge, he didn't get ripped off. Like the Falcons got completely shelled, shock shell, ripped off in that deal. The Giants ultimately gave up pretty fair value, I think, to move from 34 to 25, 9 spots. Like, I think the draft trade chart says they got beat a little bit on that trade. That's fine if you're getting beat a little bit. I don't think ultimately them losing the leverage by every team knowing that they were trying to make this move hurt them in the long run, at least from the value standpoint. So I think that's something we can hang our hat on. One more thought and question I want to ask you about and concept with drafting that was released from this video. You saw it when the Giants, they did make the trade. You saw Brian Daboll be like, great job, Joseph, like super pumped up. It's not the first time that Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll have celebrated a trade up. They celebrated it with Hyatt. They celebrated it with the Deonte Banks trade up. I recently heard Eric DaCosta on a podcast really break down eloquently. I don't know if you saw this clip, Nick, in a really smart, logical fashion why trading up for a player that you love is really bad business in the NFL and the value of it. And he went into the economics of it. He went into the game theory of it. And it really feels to me like a very shut and closed case that trading back is right. And he brought up a really good point that I never really considered with that, which is essentially like, there's no guarantee that the player you're trading up for wouldn't be on the board when you pick. So that's the first factor in it. Then there's also no guarantee that the one that we always discussed, it's a crapshoot. There's no guarantee that the player selected ultimately in that pick that you originally had is going to be worse than that player there. And as you break this thing down, it really becomes clear to me that trading up is not very good business in the NFL. It's a really bad process in my mind from an economics and a game theory standpoint. And it's a process that Giants are really a big part of. Not all teams trade up. The Ravens never trade up. The Eagles very rarely trade up. They finally did it this year. So I know they did one last year for Cooper DeJean too. If I don't,
they trade up.
Maybe they trade up, but the Ravens never trade up. The Chiefs are not a team that trades up very often, if ever. And regardless of who does it and who doesn't, Nick, I do think that his points are really strong, Eric DaCosta, about why it's a bad idea. Seems like the Giants are a team that trades up. They've done it a lot. I'm starting to feel good about this regime for sure, Nick. This is one area I still don't personally love.
I'm okay with them trading up if they want to identify somebody and go after him. It's not like Dave Gettleman where it's like, oh, I got to do it every second. You could see that there's a process behind trading up and that Joe Schoen has an idea of what he's willing to part ways with, and he seems pretty stubborn with that. And I want my general manager to be stubborn with that. I don't want him to be moved off of his conviction of what he's willing to give up for a certain trade. So to me, it's a wise process. So I'm fine with the general manager being a little bit aggressive, going out of his way to trade up for a player, especially if that player is a quarterback and it's the specific quarterback that you're head coach wants. I'm not going to bash that. Maybe the Jalen Hyatt one, you could say, sure. And maybe the Giants seem to learn about that because what did they say back then? They said, oh, well, we wanted John Michael Schmitz or Jalen Hyatt. We went with John Michael Schmitz, and then we had to trade up and get. Well, this time it's like, well, we wanted Cam Scadaboo. We wanted Marcus Bowe. We went with Cam Scadaboo, and then they waited 50 picks to get Marcus Bowe and then not trade up. So I'm not too upset with Joe Schoen as of right now because of this process.
I wonder if they hadn't already traded next year's 3, if they would have been more aggressive trying to trade up for Bowe.
Maybe.
So personally, I'll say this: of all the trade ups, this is by far my favorite. The one for Dart. If you're going to trade up for me, it really has to be for a quarterback. Or for like a player like Jalen Carter, who's falling when he shouldn't fall, that type of situation, a guaranteed blue chip or something like that. The trade ups like the Hyatt trade up and the Banks trade up, those are ones that I would personally never do as a GM. And I'm not thrilled they're the type of team that does that. To be honest, I hope it doesn't continue personally. That's just my opinion on it. I want them to be more like the trade back team. I want them to be more like a team that understands, like, we don't know more than everybody else. A, and B, that guy might still be there. Like, we can't guarantee this guy is going to get picked before our pick, and we think he's going to get picked, but we don't know that for sure. It's a big crapshoot.
You want to know what sucks, man? One time the Giants, we praised the Giants process when it came to trading back. It has been a catastrophic failure. Catastrophic.
One time they did it, yeah.
The one time, literally, Daniel Jeremiah had to he just had egg all over his face because he's like, oh, Dave Gettleman's never going to trade back. Dave Gettleman ended up
I
trading
know.
back twice that year.
He said it that pre-Jeff. He's like, I'll kill. What did he say? Like, hell will freeze over before Dave Gettleman ever trades back. Is that what Jeremiah said?
It was something like that. And then he goes and he trades back, and we're like, oh, wow, yeah, we did trade it back. This was good. And the next thing you know, it's like, oh, wait, all the players the Giants got out of this trade are terrible. Evan
But like
Neal,
the worst part
Darius
about it
Stoney.
is like
They
it
did
was
get Daniel
real
Bellinger, but like that's later in the draft. And it was
right. And
crazy.
you know the worst part about it is not only was it like great process by the Giants, it worked out almost as good as possible. The pick they got from trading back was higher than the pick they had in the class before. They had 10 overall or 11 overall, was it? And they ended up getting 7 overall next year from the Bears. The Bears had a bad season. It was like a perfect team to trade up with, like the team that was going to trade for Fields, and they weren't going to have a good year. Plus, you're getting 20, and you're getting 7. You're getting 20 and 7 for 11. Like you should be able to rebuild your whole roster through that trade. But you got to be able to evaluate players, and you can't have a mindset like Dave had that year, which is no matter what, I'm getting a playmaker with that 20th pick overall. So it's Kadarius Toney. He's the next best on our board. It has to be. Let me take the fucking best player overall, you dumb idiot. You can't go into a draft class saying I have to get a playmaker. Like that's not how this
Everyone knew it. Everyone knew that's exactly what the Giants wanted to do. They gave Kenny Golladay the contract, and then Howie Roseman was like, hey, Dallas, what's going on?
Right.
Let's trade up. Philly trades up, gets Devonta Smith.
Gets Devonta before
Giants
us.
are like, oh, I guess we'll trade back then. We really wanted Devonta Smith. And then the Cowboys go and they get Micah Parsons with the next pick.
Yeah, and Slater goes 1 or 2 picks after Parsons as well. Rashawn Slater, a player we loved and a player who could have been a great tackle for us with Andrew Thomas for years to come. He's been injured a lot, so that's been unfortunate for him. But when he's played, he's been great. But yeah, it does suck. I hope that doesn't stop them from doing it in the future, though. I'm still a massive believer from a game theory and economic standpoint that the best thing you can do in an NFL draft is trade back and not try to outsmart your fellow GMs, especially because there's so many injuries, so many factors in if a prospect hits or not. Anyway, let's talk a little bit about a quick recap that Dan Duggan, shout out Dan Duggan, the reporter for the Giants from The Athletic, gave us from Giants rookie minicamp today. We're recording this on Friday. It's going to drop on Friday. Not much to work with. It's minicamp. Dan said Daboll's very cautious about overtaxing players during this pre-draft process. The only player to participate in 7-on-7 drills was quarterback Jackson Dart. And according to Duggan, Dark looks sharp. He said he has got plenty of zip on some passes in the tight windows. I think that's pretty fair. He definitely put some zip on the ball in the tight window, especially short to intermediate. He said that Mike Kafka, Nick, was calling plays into Dart via walkie-talkie. You know, that's something interesting to me. They talked a lot about Mike Kafka's role in the development of Patrick Mahomes the first year the Chiefs drafted him, when Mahomes sat that whole season until week 17 behind Alex Smith. And they had a whole process for developing Mahomes and bringing him along from a mental standpoint. And then it felt like when Mahomes, got his chance to play, boom, he hit the ground running. It wasn't just the physical stuff with Mahomes. I felt like in year 1 when he finally played, I guess it's year 2, but his first full season as starter, like he was really advanced from a mental standpoint and processing standpoint. And that was something that was a question mark coming out of Texas Tech with Cliff. People were like, oh, it's going to take him a while from that standpoint. It was one of the reasons he was, not viewed as a number 1 overall pick type prospect. So I wonder if they have that same plan in place for Jackson Dart.
I have to imagine they have something similar, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a different situation, but I guess maybe similar. I mean, Alex Smith had a long rapport with Andy Reid up until that point, whereas Russell Wilson is also coming in new to this offense, has to learn. He's a professional; he'll be okay. But yeah, I think that's a good point, and it's a solid reality that the Giants have. They have a quarterback. I don't know if you want to call him a whisperer, but a former quarterback who can relate with Jackson Dart. And this former quarterback was able to relate with Patrick Mahomes. Does not mean Jackson Dart's going to be Patrick Mahomes. Obviously, don't need to state the obvious, but I just did. Bless you, Dan. You're sneezing. What do you got? The allergies over there?
Yeah, something's going on in here. It's cold. But yeah, I think you're right on that. And we'll see what happens with that development as we go along here. The only other note was that Marcus Bowe was at right tackle in the install. And that is something the Giants have confirmed. They're going to start him at right tackle. Be interesting.
I like that.
Yeah, I think it's good. I think he can play. It's like the same thing with Zach Tom. They said he can't play right tackle. Let's see if they're right. All that they say he can't do it is based on just measurements and things that may not factor in, because Zach Tom's been a really good tackle at the NFL level, despite being told by scouts he can never play tackle. He has to kick inside. So I'm excited to see Marcus Bowe's development. I think he's another player who probably won't play much this year unless things go wrong for the Giants. But
Which, never
which has
rule that
happened.
out.
You never know if that type of thing will happen. All right. Anything else just from the rookie minicamp or thoughts on what was released from the Giants with all these clips?
Yeah, well, there's just a couple notes that I wanted to
Yeah.
just put out there. So Casey Rogers was also released. Remember, he
Okay.
was the
Yep.
UDFA defensive lineman from Oregon last year. Played a little bit down the stretch because the Giants had a dearth of talent in their defensive line room. And then Victor Dimukeji, who the Giants signed,
Yep.
tore his pec in Giants workouts. And I bring that up because I thought, and I still kind of think if you got healthy, would have
No.
been somebody who would have played like a Timon Fox type
He had
of
a little
role.
juice to him. Yeah.
I liked him in college. He went to Duke, because the Giants have to have somebody who is a Duker on their
Gotta bring up that GPA on the team.
yeah, got to bring up that GPA on the team. But yeah, no, so he I mean, you can't really rely on him right now. Timon Fox is still on the roster too, so that does spell well for him. And the Giants are still deep at edge after adding Abdul Carter, but just a note that I feel like we should bring up.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. And luckily for the Giants, they do have depth at this edge position. So it's the one position where they can afford to get an early injury, I would say, among all the others. But yeah, we'll see what happens as we move forward. More content coming. Obviously, we're going to get some mini camp, some mandatory mini camp. We're going to get a lot more to work with. Actually, it looks like Jackson Dart is right now having his presser, so we're not going to cover that. We might talk about that next week. But yeah, keep it locked and loaded on Big Blue Banter. Please hit the like button. Please subscribe. I know it's a downtime for content. I know it's a downtime in the football cycle, so help support us by liking and subscribing. We'll probably try and do a live mailbag next week as well, so we can kind of get more of that engagement going and not fall off too much after draft season. So keep it locked and loaded. Have a great rest of your week, and we will talk to you soon.